The title comes from this conversation I had with Dala Megan when we first met. We were in Berlin during the opening of an exhibition, and we were talking about museums and our role in the perpetuation of abolition. And then she said, you know, we own it now. Of course, the ship is sinking, but we own it. I was really moved by it and thinking, what a complicated position of like owning the sinking of a ship, of being entitled to a moment of wreckage. So I started to think, okay, what's there in this apparent contradiction between the figure of the sinking ship and the figure of prosperity? That's when I started to think about logistics, the way things are moved, bodies are moved, histories are moved across oceans and waters by ships, and the way certain possible interruptions of these flows could be perceived as moments of prosperity if we allow ourselves to look at global logistics as a problem, as an ecological problem, as a social question that needs to be addressed. The title of the exhibition kind of comes out of this tension and this desire of operating in between these two images, but not as if they were like completely contradictory, but as if there was some nexus between them. Since the project was all about logistics and movement and the way motion is kind of controlled and produced, it made a lot of sense to kind of make that mark in the title of the works, which started to help me to focus more on the question of migration. Grieving time is one of these things that were kind of like going on as a phrase, as like an idea, and as a desire to kind of deal with these two terms. I realized that I wasn't grieving time alone. I'm not grieving time all by myself. There are these other forces that are grieving time with me. That idea of grieving time also relates with the other thoughts on temporality that are present in the exhibition. The chrononormativity and the way temporality is regulated produces a large deal of violence, institutional violence, ecological violence, racial violence, and so many forces of violence that are expressed through enforced waithood. This idea of grieving time becomes grieving the fact that time is regulated and controlled by forces that will impose a particular form of dealing with temporality onto us. The idea of the performance there was this connection of like trying to share with people a sense of what the temporal trauma kind of generates. There's like the sense of like time being all over the place, even though we are dealing with a structure that is based on a very strict chrononormativity. So I think the performance wanted to share that and to understand that sharing, which is like a form of redistribution of damage, as a key aspect of grieving, as the moment of grieving. So grieving as something that needs that form of redistribution of damage. Let's think together about that damage that affects us in an unequal way. Violence happens in a programmed way. It's not out of nothing. When violence happens, it's not an anomaly, it's normality functioning. But it functions in a way in which violence is badly distributed. Certain communities will have to endure it, while others will be protected from it. We need to start like even out a little bit and like sharing that burden.